Hi everyone. Yesterday I asked if you guys want to hear my thoughts on the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin, and from last I saw, all votes said sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and give my thoughts on that, and kind of do a little bit of a review. Not really gonna like give it a rating or anything, but just kind of talk about it and want to know if you guys agree with me or if you guys think I'm wacky, or if the if what I'm talking about interests you, and if you guys are interested in reading it. So the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin was an amazing book, definitely praiseworthy and worthy of the Hugo Award that it won in 2016. And if the sequels are just as good as this one, which I haven't got to yet, then I assume that their Hugo Awards for 2017 and 2018 are just as deserving. I've broken this down, this little review down into three categories. So I'm going to talk about the world, the characters, and the story, all respectively. So we'll start with the world. It's this amazing world that I instantly fell in love with from the very first few pages, as the main narrator was describing it. It's a world called the Stillness, or at least the continent is called the Stillness. And it's an ironic name in that it is constantly hammered by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, the whole shebang all the time, just from plates constantly moving, and as what is mentioned as stone lore in the text is called Father Earth, who is who is Earth embodied, and is constantly punishing humankind for all the damage that they've done to the stillness, to the Earth. So it's kind of like a Pangeic continent, or rather, it had reverted to a Pangeic state, to a supercontinent state, which was I thought was really cool, and it talks a lot about that. And something else that I thought was really cool right from the first few pages was that there are these obelisks that float in the sky, and they have their own paths, their kind of own orbits, that they follow. I wouldn't really call it an orbit because they can kind of diverge and go wherever they want, but yeah, they do follow their own paths, which I thought was really interesting as well. Something that I really enjoyed about just the overall world is how much Jemisin paid attention to geography. I love geography, I love the science behind it, and I think she did an amazing job at just portraying that very well, with even down to the plate tectonics, and reasons why there are islands. There are constantly new islands all the time, but no one lives on islands, or hardly anyone does, and if they do, they usually have to move very quickly for tsunamis or earthquakes that just totally wipe them out. And then another thing in the world building is just like all the different cultures that she writes about. I definitely hold that up there with the way that she writes cultures, with Sanderson, and the way that he writes the Stormlight Archive, and all the different cultures that he has in there and all their differences, as well as Jordan in the Wheel of Time series, with all the different cultures that he contains within his world. She does cultures very, very well, I think, and yeah, and I really appreciate all of the thought that went into creating this world. It it really makes me happy, because the last book that I read with the world building, it was interesting, but it wasn't this next level stuff that I just really think a lot of fantasy is missing these days. Yes, that's all I want to talk about with the world next and world building. We'll go into some characters next. So there's three main characters in this book that you follow. One is called Asun, the other is Senite, and the other is Demaya. All three are female, and you follow them in their stories um, throughout the world. Each is going through a different stage of their lives. Um, as soon as going through, um, well, it starts. The story starts with her losing her son, who was actually murdered by her husband and his father, and she chooses to go hunt him down because he has also kidnapped their daughter, and she thinks possibly has murdered her too. So Asun wants to go and hunt her husband down, possibly kill him for revenge, or at least find out why he killed their son. And along the way she finds several things that kind of distract her, but she constantly is trying to stay focused, trying to keep a sense of hope that she will find her husband, and find out why, or get revenge, or whatever it is. And it's very touching, and it's very real. The way that Jemisin writes is a very real and very raw, with emotions and with details and with everything down to each bit of humanity that she touches and goes through. I really appreciate it. And then the next character that we see, I don't think I have this in order of who appears first, but one of the other characters is Senite. I think I am also pronouncing these names correctly. She didn't put in her in her appendices how to pronounce the names, and I haven't looked up if she cares. But so I'm just taking my best guess. So Senite is a woman who has this power that actually all three of these characters share, called orogeny. I think I'm also pronouncing that right. Again, she didn't put a pronunciation guide. Which basically can either cause earthquakes and these tsunamis and volcanic eruptions, or they can suppress them. And so in this place called the Fulcrum, Senite is there, and she's already been trained in this to help the stillness contain these catastrophes, these natural disasters, and so she's basically at this point in her life has been tasked to bear a child, and help this person who's this person named Alabaster, who's a very high-ranking member of the Fulcrum, sire a child so that they can have more people that are just as powerful as he is, because he's the only one of his rank, and so they want more of him to be able to have that kind of power. And it's really interesting. Senite and him kind of go through this hateful relationship at first, because they're just ordered to be together, and it grows into this really interesting and wonderful relationship later that is both loving and frustrating to the reader, and just very well written. Then the other character, her name is Demaya. She's a little girl. I think she's about 10 years old. She also has this power of orogeny, and she's taken to the Fulcrum as a little girl because her parents disown her, which is one of the other big things of the world building, that the Origines are looked down upon, because potentially they could totally destroy everything, and are often and sometimes are killed as little children, and sometimes are just totally, or sometimes will be thrown aside basically and made orphans because their family doesn't want them anymore. And so the Fulcrum will come and find these children that have this power, and are called Origines, or sometimes as their slur, Rogas, which is a very offensive slur, but even the Origines use it amongst themselves, um, and is very is very contrasting in a lot of ways with today's society and racial slurs, um, for all races, and I think that I can really appreciate that. Um, just seeing the contrast that Jemisin puts in there. Anyway, so Demaya is taken to be trained as an Orogene, to harness her powers and to make sure that she's not one of the Orogenes that is destroying the world because of her unconscious abilities, but rather is one that can control her abilities and help the world. Um, and then that's basically the characters and their stories and the paths that they follow. Um, One of the things that I really appreciate about the story, just overall, I'm not gonna like give a synopsis of the story as much as I already have, but the other thing that I really enjoy was that the story is Jemisin writes, you know, her dedication, or she dedicates this story to by saying, "For all those who have to fight for the respect that everyone else is given without question," and it really shows that that theme carries throughout the entire story, um, and it really just brings um, segregation and prejudice to a whole new light. I think, especially in our world, and I really liked that she used that in a fantasy setting to be able to talk about that in her own creative writing in that way. Um, and it's just and you know she just does a really good job with each separation of the characters. Each one has to go in their own separate path in their own separate way, and she does it in such a unique style that I just really appreciate. Her writing style is just so different than from what we're used to seeing. Um, it's very poetic. It's stuff that you would normally see in creative nonfiction, from like the first person kind of thing, and it's just amazing. I would highly recommend this book. Highly, I really think that anyone that would want to read it should definitely pick up a copy. If you know me, if you're close by, you're definitely welcome to come and borrow mine. I'm happy to lend it out to you. Anyway, so that just concludes my thoughts on that. I hope you guys all have a good one. See ya.